My name is Meg Holloway. I'm 68. I woke up this morning in my own guest room in a Seattle suburb, a room I've always thought of as temporary, for guests, for my granddaughter when she was little, for my friend Susan when she went through a divorce, but never for me. This morning I woke up under a thin IKEA blanket, with a lump in my throat and the taste of bleach in my nose. Someone had desperately cleaned the bathroom last night. Or rather, scrubbed it completely like everything else in this house that once smelled like me. The window is open. I can hear the robot lawnmower working in the backyard, a gift my son Josh gave himself last Christmas. At the time, I was even glad. "Oh, so you're staying for the winter?" I asked. He just shrugged. "Well, maybe until spring." That was December last year. Now it's June. I sit on the edge of the bed. The room is tidy. Too tidy. My books are packed in a box under the desk. My favorite throw blanket is in the closet because it doesn't match the new decor. There's no television. Only some scented diffuser that smells, excuse me, like a hotel bathroom in Tulsa. And a photo of Josh and Kristen on the wall, in a black frame I never bought. I put my feet down on the floor. It's cold. Laminate. My home used to be warm. Wooden. With rugs, I picked myself in Cedro Woolly, at Mrs. Becky's antique shop. Where are those rugs now? Behind the door, silence. Then a quiet voice. "Alexa, turn on bedroom lights." And the lights come on. But not in my room. Alexa is no longer their assistant. I don't know when it happened. When my home mine stopped being mine. When my books were taken off the shelves to make it visually lighter. When my china was moved to the garage because we need space for protein shakes. When my bedroom, the very one I spent 20 years renovating, painting, embroidering, choosing curtains and rugs for, suddenly became their master suite. I sit in this cage for good mothers and think, it all started with coffee. Josh called last fall. "Mom, we're having trouble with rent. Kristen and I can stay with you for a while, just until January." I said yes. Of course. He's my son. He has a family, and I have extra rooms. And then they just stayed. Then they temporarily took over the bedroom, because it's easier to feed the baby there. Then they suggested a light renovation, while Kristen's on contract with a design studio. And then, suddenly, I became a woman in a box. A box made of drywall, Wayfair furniture, and other people's smells. Have you ever felt like your home no longer smells like you? I stand up, open the door. The hallway is perfect, like in a magazine. White walls, black and white photos in frames. Where is all my colorful pottery? I'm too scared to ask. In the kitchen, I hear sounds. Blender. Kristen making her matcha smoothie. I don't go there. I just sit on the windowsill. Quietly. Birds sing. Somewhere, a neighbor's Labrador barks. And in my head, there's one thought. I'm not dead, but I'm not here anymore. And you know, it's not even anger. It's like being the heroine of a book, and then someone just tears out the pages with your name on them. You're not killed. They just rewrote the story. I don't know when exactly it happened, but today, this morning, with the smell of bleach and Alexa's voice, I realized I'm no longer a guest in my own home. I'm extra. And maybe this morning is the last time I'll wake up here as a guest. Maybe tomorrow I'll wake up the owner of my own life. It started the way all the best and worst things do with a single phone call. "Mom, can you sit down?" Josh said. My first thought was, Kristen's pregnant. Or there was a car accident. Or someone died. But no, Josh had lost his job. Their Berkeley startup had folded as they usually do with a pompous TechCrunch article and the phrase, "We're taking a pause to explore new opportunities." 2 days later, they were already on the I-5, hauling a trailer full of boxes, their dog Tesla, and a fridge that was apparently too niche to leave behind for the landlord. I met them at the curb. Kristen got out first in a lavender tracksuit, her hair in a perfectly styled messy bun, immediately recording an Instagram story. Finally made it to Seattle. Family time. Healing time. Number. New chapter number. Soft living. She always had those hashtags as if life could be summed up in an Instagram carousel. "Meg, thank you for taking us in. It's so cozy and homey here. she said, and by the next day had cleared my knitted doilies off the dresser because they were visual noise. "We're just here temporarily, Mom," Josh told me. He always said that. Temporarily was his favorite word. Like the tattoo on his ankle, this too shall pass. It's been 6 months. The tattoo's still there. The first week, I was thrilled, honestly. The house was full of voices again. My grandson Aiden ran through the garden with my ceramic gnome, shouting, "This is my robot now." Kristen made chia spinach smoothies and even convinced me to try one. It tasted like grass and chalk had blended into a milkshake. But I smiled, because family, because temporary. By week 2, I noticed my bedroom was somewhat occupied. There was a crib, a bottle warmer, a white noise machine. Kristen explained, "It's just cooler here and closer to the bathroom. It helps Aiden sleep better." And again, temporary. I started sleeping in the guest room, on a narrow bed that made my back ache. Josh brought me his old Spider-Man pillow from childhood. "It's still comfy, Mom." By week 4, I realized my books had disappeared from the shelves. In their place, minimalist faux cactus pots and white letter blocks spelling home. And my books? Boxed, in the garage, along with my dishes, and toaster, and half the kitchenware, because we're mostly raw food now. I called Susan. "They even took down my curtains," I said. Susan laughed. "Meg, you talk like it's an invasion." "Isn't it?" I asked. "Oh, come on. It's just a modern open space, like on HGTV. HGTV. I looked at my house black and white, sterile, scentless, detailless, as if I hadn't lived here the last 32 years, but was just renting it on Airbnb. I tried to reclaim the space. Hung up one of my watercolor paintings, a butterfly I made in a class in Portland. Kristen gently took it down and put it in a cabinet. It kind of vibrationally disrupts the composition. Vibrationally disrupts the composition. I didn't argue. I just poured my coffee down the sink. Because no one drinks coffee in this house anymore. Only matcha. Only oat milk. Only a life where my old porcelain rose tea set has no place. And still temporary. I repeated it like a mantra. Like a spell against the silence that settled every evening after Kristen posted another story. Cozy night with the fam. So grateful. So healing. And I'd sit in the guest room, listening to them laugh upstairs. In my bedroom, and you know I wasn't against the laughter. But there comes a moment when the laughter starts sounding too loud once you're no longer part of it. That's when I think it really hit me. Not anger, but this little click inside. What if temporary had turned into permanent and no one planned on telling me? Some things don't come with announcements, like the first signs of fall, or the moment your bedroom stops being yours. It's not a letter, not a meeting, not a family conversation. It's just a fact you run into one morning. Like I did that Saturday, I woke up early, just past 6. The sun was barely brushing the tops of the pine trees outside. I put on my robe, the flannel one, with buttons and pockets, the one from gym. Walked down the hallway barefoot like I used to. I wanted to grab an old photo album from my dresser. There was a picture Susan had asked for, from a wedding back in '79. We were both in hats like 2 knockoff Barbara Bushes. I pushed the door open and froze. My bedroom was different. The walls no longer soft green, but a matte gray. My old dresser gone. In its place, a minimalist IKEA wardrobe. On the bed, pillows in beige and taupe. Kristen's sandals on the floor. Her Kindle on the nightstand, next to a candle labeled Sandalwood Plus Intention. And a baby mat, a crib. And on the door, a wooden sign. "Please knock, baby sleeping." I didn't knock. I just stood there, listening to the distant bump of the robot vacuum, hitting a chair leg in the kitchen. It sounded like a heart, beating out of rhythm. "Mom, you okay?" Josh was behind me, wearing a t-shirt from the GoDaddy Developers Conference. "What happened to my room?" He scratched the back of his neck. "Oh, we just gave it a little refresh. Kristen had a barter deal with this interior blog. I mean, you're sleeping in the guest room anyway. You're sleeping in the guest room anyway. That's the most dangerous phrase in the world. You don't wear that dress anymore. You don't read those books. You don't sleep here. You don't really exist. You're not mad, right, Mom? I wanted to say, mad about what? About disappearing? About being turned into a piece of furniture quietly listed on Craigslist? But instead, I just nodded. Of course not, I said. It's just a room. He smiled. Hugged me. He smelled like oat milk, coffee, and whatever men's deodorant is trendy right now. You're the most understanding mom in the world. Understanding. That's what people call women who are easy to ignore. I went back to the guest room. Saturday, on the edge of the bed. Opened the photo album, the one I came for. There we were, me and Jim. Our first trip to Yellowstone. He wore that ridiculous safari hat. I had on a sweatshirt that said, "Don't mess with Texas." We were holding hands, smiling. I looked at that version of Meg. She was bold. She built this house, chose the tiles, hauled the ladder, planted the tulips. She argued with plumbers and made soup at 3 a.m. when Josh had a fever. And now she lived in the guest room. The same room we used to put distant cousins in. No closet, just a drawer under the bed. My past packed away in Sharpie-labeled boxes. Stuff, old dishes, Mom's books. And I suddenly realized I hadn't been kicked out. I'd just been muted. Like background music that doesn't fit the new aesthetic. It wasn't malicious. It was just convenient. When Mom is nearby, but out of the way. When she lives here temporarily, as they say. Even though, really, the only temporary thing in that house is everything except her shadow. I turned off the light, and in the dark, I whispered to myself, "You haven't disappeared, Meg. You just haven't stepped out of the frame yet." I didn't realize the door was locked right away. At first, I just thought the handle was stuck. Old house, it happens. Built in '87. Jim said back then, "Good bones, but you'll spend more time with it than with me." He wasn't wrong. The bones are still here. Jim just in photos. I jiggled the handle again, back and forth. Nothing. Click. Nothing. Click. Still nothing. Then I heard footsteps on the other side. And a voice. Kristen. Oh, she's still asleep. Let's not bother her. And then, we just figured we'd keep it closed. She needs rest. Let her have her morning. My morning. I looked down at my coffee mug, already cold. I'd made it myself. In that old coffee maker they stuffed under the sink. Made it quietly, on tiptoe, so I wouldn't wake anyone. Funny. I've lived here for 30 years, but now I move quieter than the pipes. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding that cold cup, and suddenly remembered being 25. Hammering curtain rods into this very wall back when the room had no carpet, no curtains, just the smell of fresh paint and hope. Back then, I wore a tank top that said "Built to Last." And I really believed that what I was building was mine. And now? Now I couldn't even leave my own room, because I might disturb someone. At first, I laughed. I really did, out loud from the absurdity of it. A short, brittle sound, like a twig snapping. Then I heard music from upstairs. Kristen, starting her day with her usual playlist, Mindful Mornings. I recognized the song. Lana Del Rey. Sad, slow, a voice from another world. And I was in this box, a room for a guest who hasn't been expected in years. And suddenly, sharply, almost physically I felt it. I had become extra in the house I hammered nails into. And it wasn't just hurt. It was something deeper. Something unjust. I wasn't a perfect mother. Yes, I yelled. Yes, I served Josh pasta with ketchup and called it American style. Yes, I worked weekends, and once forgot to pick him up from baseball practice. But I built. I dragged this house along through everything. I fixed pipes after Jim left. I planted the garden. I hung the wallpaper. I protected this place as an extension of myself. And now? Now I was a flaw in the design of their new life. I didn't cry. I just sat there listening to the music upstairs, to Aiden's little feet running down the stairs, to Kristen laughing at something on TikTok. And I didn't feel like a woman. Not even a grandmother. I felt like an obsolete feature. You wanted the house to stay alive, I said out loud. Well, it's alive, just not with you in it. I walked to the mirror. In it, gray hair, tired skin, the familiar bathrobe. But in my eyes, something else. Not anger. Not pity. Clarity. I turned around, went back to the bed, picked up my notebook, opened a page where I'd written in my own hand. Things I'd do if I were free. First line. Go to the Oregon coast, alone. I lifted my pencil and carefully added right next to it, soon. It happened on a Tuesday. Or maybe Thursday. I honestly can't tell anymore. When you live in the guest room, days start to blur together. Like pages in a book where none of the characters are you. I walked into the kitchen to get some water. Kristen was by the front door in a matching workout set. Earbuds in, phone in one hand, collagen water in the other. Oh, Meg, great you're up. Aiden's still napping, but if he wakes, just give him the banana puree. 30 seconds in the microwave, cool it with the spoon. I'm off to Pilates back in 2 hours. Maybe 3. And that was it. Click of the door, soft hum of the Tesla pulling away. And I was alone. With Aiden. No warning. No, do you mind? No. Could you help out? It wasn't a request anymore. It was just background. As if I were part of the furniture, like a sofa or an air purifier. Standing there, breathing, and that's apparently enough. I glanced at the fridge. A little magnet read, thankful, grateful, blessed. I had nothing to say to that. 10 minutes later, Aiden woke up. He's a sweetheart, truly. Curly hair just like Josh had at that age. Big eyes. And that little habit of tugging his ear when he's bored. We sat together, ate the banana. Then he spilled his water on the floor. I wiped it up. He cried as toddlers do. Nothing unusual. Except for one persistent feeling that grew like a headache behind the eyes. No one asked me. They just assumed. Dropped it in my lap and vanished. And that was the fracture. Not loud, but deep. I used to think, well, who else if not me? But that morning, I heard something new rise up from inside. Why is it always me? I went back to the guest room while Aiden played with a little wooden elephant on the rug. I opened the bottom drawer, the one I'd filled with all the non-essential things. Found an old notebook. Faded logo on the front. Community College of Snohomish. Opened to the first page. My retirement dreams. Dated 2009. Handwriting still steady, still confident. And as I read, my heart didn't race with anger, but with something gentler. A quiet memory of who I used to be. Fishing in Montana. Just me, the river, and coffee in a thermos. Photography class reel film, not phone filters. Living by the ocean even in a trailer. As long as I could hear the waves. Taking the Empire Builder train to Chicago book in hand, no phone. Buying a real coffee machine, Italian. Loud. Serious. I stared at the list and thought, where's the bullet point that says, give up your bedroom and make oatmeal on your daughter-in-law's fitness schedule? Nowhere. Because I'm not a nanny. Not mommy on call. Not a backup plan with gray hair. I'm Meg Holloway. A woman who once built a home with her own 2 hands and meant to grow old on her own terms. I heard Aiden giggle. I walked over. Saturday beside him. He handed me a book thick, with buttons and textures. I read him Brown Bear, what do you see? And then I said softly, Grandma sees that she's had enough. He didn't understand. Of course not. But I did. And that was enough. Later, I put him down for a nap. Then I made coffee in that old copper Seve they forgot to throw out. Saturday on the back porch. Closed my eyes and pictured it. Me in a trailer on the Oregon coast. A film camera in my hands. And no one nearby who needs me for just a couple hours. And you know what I felt? It's possible. And it's coming. I didn't call Linda right away. First, I just sat there holding my phone like it might read my mind. It didn't. It just kept suggesting new chia pudding recipes and cheap flights to Vancouver. Thanks, Google. Not helpful. Then, finally, I tapped her name. And a second later, her voice, Holloway, for crying out loud. Where the hell have you been? Linda's voice was always like that. Like a woman who could stir chili with one hand and apply red lipstick with the other. Solid. Rooted. A voice that never trembled at the word sorry. I started. And then the words spilled out, I'm living in my own guest room. My bedroom became a young family space. My dishes are in boxes. My book's in the garage. And me? I'm a convenient shadow. Silence. Then, you've got to be kidding me. I laughed. Nervously. I wouldn't believe it either if someone else told me. And that's when Linda said, Meg, you're not a tree. Get up and leave. Just like that. No warm-up. No disclaimer. You're not a tree. Get up and leave. I went quiet. Then she said, Did you forget who you are? Back in '80, we left our husbands and drove to Vegas with $30 and your Ford Granada that sounded like a lawnmower on fire. I remembered. The motel with a swimming pool full of air. Eating Doritos for breakfast. Dancing in some bar where the bartender had a scar across half his face and told Linda, You look like Loretta Lynn but with fire in your eyes. We were reckless. We were stupid. We were alive. You're not a doormat, Meg. Stop being convenient. Convenient is for throw pillows. You're a woman. Get out before you become a feature in someone else's life story. I didn't answer. Not right away. Instead, I stood up, opened the drawer, took out the page with my retirement dreams. Nothing ever changes loudly. Even revolutions start with something small. A cup of coffee, for example. I was sitting on the back porch, drinking mine strong, no milk, no chia seeds, and definitely no approval from wellness influencers. And I was scrolling through Zillow. Just because. Just for fun. Like window shopping dresses you know won't fit, but dreaming is still free. But the longer I looked, the more I thought, why not? At the bottom, under the Sell Your Home button, was a little line. Get a free estimate. I clicked it. And the next day, I had an appointment. The realtor showed up in a Hyundai with a bumper sticker that read, She sells, he installs. Her name was Tony. Firm handshake, green nails, glittery sneakers. She glanced around my house and said, Wow, real wood? You can't find that anymore. I nodded. I know. I picked it out myself. Tony ran her hand along the banister, opened one of the cupboard doors. This place has soul. You can feel it. I stayed loyal to wood, even when everyone else went gray and laminate. She gave me a knowing smile. This'll sell in 3 days, especially in this neighborhood, especially if we list it right. I want you to come Saturday, 10 a.m. A showing? Yes, they'll be in Portland for the weekend, conscious parenting retreat. I wasn't even being sarcastic, just stating a fact. Are you sure you don't want to talk to your family first? I shook my head. If they wanted to talk to me, we'd already be talking. On Saturday, at 9:45, I opened the windows, let the light in, brewed real coffee, and set out hazelnut cookies from my mother's recipe. Tony arrived at 10 sharp new blazer, tablet in hand. Behind her, 3 sets of buyers. One was a young guy with round glasses and a Golden Gate Bridge tattoo on his arm. He stopped by the kitchen cabinet and said, Oh, vintage kettle. Does that come with the house? I laughed. It's older than you, kid, but maybe we can negotiate. The second was a retired couple from Tacoma. They were whispering near the fireplace. The woman, Marjorie, ran her hand over the old armchair. We could spend Christmas here, she said. The third was a family with 2 kids. The boy ran straight into the backyard and shouted, They have a gnome! Yes, the garden gnome was still there. No one had thrown it out. Yet. Tony led them from room to room, talking about the new roof, the good school district, how the house still holds real warmth. And I stood off to the side, in a denim dress, coffee in hand, and for the first time in months, I felt like the house was listening to me again. One of the buyers turned to me. "Have you lived here long?" "Since 1987. "Isn't it scary to sell?" I looked him in the eye and answered without hesitation. "Scarier to stay in the wrong place." By evening, Tony had sent me 4 preliminary offers, all over asking price. One buyer even added a handwritten note, "Your home smells like life. Thank you for opening it to us." I read it and closed the laptop, quietly. No fanfare, no drama, just decision made. While they were off in Portland meditating on how to be honest with themselves, I, right here in my kitchen, had finally been honest with myself. I put the kettle on the stove. Yes, that vintage one. And said out loud, "Meg, you just showed a house, and yourself. And you know what? I'd sell that kettle, but not myself. Never again." They came back Sunday evening, trailing that familiar mix of cedar oil, sandalwood, and tense harmony. Kristen posted a story on Instagram. "Back from our mindful weekend. Recharged. Total zen. Yuji." Josh was carrying the suitcases. Aiden was asleep on his shoulder. I was sitting on the porch, wearing a sweater, with a folder in my lap and a glass of wine in my hand. California Red, 2012. A bottle I'd been saving for a special occasion. I guess it had finally arrived. "Hey Mom, how was your weekend?" Josh called out. "Eventful," I said. He set the suitcase down, looked at me more closely. "Are you okay?" "Perfectly." "Then why is there a letter from a realtor in the mailbox? What does sale agreement signed mean?" His voice wasn't yelling. "Not yet. It means what it says." I took a sip. Kristen came out of the house in sweatpants, the color of dusty lavender, phone in hand. "Wait, what contract?" Josh's voice cracked, now no more composure. "You're selling the house without even talking to us? You said this was temporary. So perfect, I've decided my temporary is over." He went quiet for a few seconds, then stepped closer. "But you promised. You said this was our home, that Aiden would grow up here like I did." I looked at him, a grown man, with lines around his eyes and gray at his temples, but in that moment speaking like a little boy again. And gently, but clearly, I said, "No, Josh, I said this was my home, and you were always welcome in it. But you stopped being a guest the day you started taking over my rooms, my quiet, and my air." "But we're family." "Exactly. That's why I'm giving you the chance to build a life of your own, in your own house. Not in the shadow of mine." Kristen stepped forward, just a little. "But we just started updating the nursery." I looked at her, calmly. "No venom, no sting. Now you'll have the chance to build a nursery somewhere you own. Not as tenants with benefits." Josh lowered his eyes. He was quiet for a long time. Then, softly, almost like a child, he said, "I thought you'd never kick us out." "I didn't. I just walked out myself." I stood, slowly, with dignity, like in one of those old films, handed him the folder. Inside were copies of the documents, the offers from buyers, the realtor's card, and a list of what would stay with the house. The stove, the fireplace screen, the garden gnome, and yes, the kettle. And what I'd be taking with me was the most important thing: myself. Closing is in 2 weeks. You should start looking for a place before it's too late. I turned, walked down the hallway past the wall where Jim's old photos still hung, stepped into what had become my temporary guest room, and closed the door behind me. On the bed was a box, my photo album, a couple of books, and an old postcard from Linda. "You're not a tree. Get up and leave." Next to it was a second bottle of wine and a notebook. On the cover, I had written, "Empire Builder. Ticket booked. Departure in 3 weeks." I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt just one thing: freedom. The morning was clear, but cool. A perfect day for the road, or for starting something new. I woke up early before sunrise. The house was still asleep. That silence I always loved. No music, no voices, no one saying, "Alexa, play meditation." Just me, the creaking floorboards, and the first rays of light. I walked through the house one last time. No drama, no sentimentality. More like a curator closing down an exhibit she'd loved, but knew its time was up. The kitchen was spotless. The espresso machine at one, big and expensive. The one Kristen brought home after some collab, with a brand gleamed in the sun. I looked at it and realized I didn't want it. Didn't want anything that screamed convenient for everyone but me. Instead, I opened the bottom cupboard and took out my old Sesve. The handle had darkened, the metal cracked in places, but holding it brought me back to Josh in his car print pajamas, to quiet morning talks with Jim, to myself at 39, tired, certain, real. In the living room, I took one thing off the wall. A photo. The family. Jim with Josh on his shoulders. Me in a flannel shirt and jeans. Summer. Laughter. Not about perfection, about roots. The photo went in the bag. The espresso machine? Let it stay. I stepped out into the yard, walked over to the big maple by the shed. Jim and I planted it in 1989. He said, "Let's plant something so Josh knows there's something here that'll outlast him." I ran my hand over the trunk. Rough, scarred, like all things real. I leaned my forehead against the bark and whispered, "You'll stay. I'm moving on. Thank you." Then I walked back to the trailer. I'd rented it for a month. White, compact, a fold-out table, a tiny stove, and if you stood in the right spot, a view of the lake. On the back window, I'd taped a sign I printed the night before. On my terms. I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry. I just pulled out onto the road that started right behind my house and led somewhere I wasn't called, "Mom, hold this. Grandma, just sit with him." Or, "Can you stay? You're home anyway." Now I'm on my way. I am with myself, and I'm not saying goodbye. 1 year later, I'm sitting on the porch of a small house I've rented by a lake in Oregon. Everything is different here. In the mornings, I take film photography classes. I try to catch the light the way I used to catch moments with Jim and Josh. Not with my hands, but through the lens. Sometimes the mistakes turn out to be the best shot. Around me, silence and the scent of pine and fresh earth. Sometimes I hear gulls calling in the distance, and the wind rustling through the leaves. I didn't lose a home. I found myself. In the evenings, we gather around the fire with the neighbors. Retired musicians, young artists, a couple who grows rare lilacs. Fleetwood Mac plays softly in the background. Landslide. And I smile. I used to think growing older meant fading into the shadows, being forgotten. But now I know. It's the light that finally lets you see your own reflection. I'm not saying goodbye to the past. I'm saying thank you. And I'm looking ahead with love, with strength, and with a silence that finally belongs to me.